Hi, and welcome to Causing a Commotion. Let's get emotional about advertising. Let me introduce you to somebody other than Homer Simpson. It's Daniel Kahneman. He's the grandfather of behavioural economics and the first non-economist to win the Nobel Prize for economics. So groundbreaking was his work. Now, you've probably heard of left brain, right brain. I'm going to talk to you about System 1 versus System 2. System 1 is our instinctive, intuitive, emotional brain, the one that's been with us since we started evolving, our reptilian brain, if you like. System 2 is our cognitive, analytical, rational brain. You know, the thing that we pride ourselves on as being distinctly human, separate from animals. What Daniel Kahneman showed is that we think much less than we think we think. Let me explain. Have a look at the relative computing power of our emotional, intuitive System 1 versus our System 2 rational brain. System 2 rational brain, 50 bits per second. System 1, 11 million bits per second, right? So in fact, what Kahneman and others' work shows is that System 2 rational brain, far from being the Oval Office of decision making that we like to think it is, in fact it's the press office, post-rationalising decisions that we've already made using System 1. And I imagine you've probably already realised this has some pretty hefty consequences for marketing and for communications. Because if we decide things using System 1, then we need to find a new model for understanding which is based on assuming that everybody makes their decisions rationally. How on earth do you do that though? How do you measure the emotional impact of a communication or a piece of marketing? Since we started evolving as human beings, we've used our faces to express the emotions going on in System 1. They've helped us get where we are today. If somebody looked sad, long before we had language, we knew they needed help. If somebody looked fearful, we knew to be aware of a danger. And Paul Ekman has demonstrated that that's why wherever you go in the world, the same 7 facial expressions of fundamental emotion are recognised. So at Brainjuicer, we said, okay, in the context of a self-completion survey, actually we can use these core fundamental emotions that drive people. We can ask them to click the face that captures how they feel and thus get that direct window into System 1, and then we can ask them why they feel what they feel. And then we can take that forward and turn that, in the case of ComMotion, our ad testing approach, into a prediction of the business effects that the ad is going to have in market, from 5-star blockbuster through to 1-star straight to video. Let me show you what the outputs look like. If you haven't seen it before, do enjoy the Cadbury Dairy Milk Gorilla ad that's playing in the top corner there. So first of all, we ask people their overall emotional response to the ad straight away before they start rationalising. We call that face trace. They're clicking the face. Then we ask them to watch the ad again, and whenever they feel something, click the face, tell us which one it is that they're feeling. And that's what we call face tracing. And that's what you're watching here unfold. In the dark green at the bottom, surprise. The light green, happiness. White is neutrality, so feeling nothing at all. And then at the top we have our negative emotions, contempt, disgust, anger, sadness in this case. You can see some of the reasons why people are feeling what they're feeling. Sadness in this case because of Phil Collins more than anything else. Very interesting output for this one. You can see how the positive emotions built throughout, how we started off with achieving a certain level of happiness, but then when the gorilla started to play the drums, another big uplift in terms of the happiness. Now that's quite a characteristic of ads that score 5 stars and indeed get forwarded on, that kind of double peak of happiness. Also though, you'll notice how the negative emotions built in the middle and then resolved towards the end, and that too tends to be a characteristic of more successful ads. As human beings, we love a story. We love the negative emotion building and then resolving. And we ask people the reason for their emotions, and you can see here that they are accounting for their emotions. So useful. So although they're saying, oh, I didn't necessarily understand the ad, you know, that was the virtue of it almost, these are the reasons why I felt what I felt great. So really useful diagnostics on the emotions. So Cadbury's brand team called the gorilla advert the ad that saved the brand. So it's no surprise that we saw a much higher emotional score than we usually get for TV ads. What's much more frightening for any marketer who uses standard pre-testing is that this Cadbury Gorilla ad on the traditional pre-testing measures quite simply would not have been aired. Why? Because its very strengths, not trying to tell you something about the brand, not going out of its way to persuade you, result in low scores on those metrics. Why? Because they're only measuring rational system 2 rather than emotional intuitive system 1 that drives our decision making. And as if proof were required, not only do we say that the Cadbury Dairy Milk Gorilla ad is a 5-star blockbuster ad, but the ROI figures demonstrate that this is far and away the most successful ad that Cadbury's have ever aired. But it's not just chocolate. Across 880 campaigns for which there was cast iron business effectiveness data, Binet and Field showed that emotional campaigns deliver a far higher return in terms of profits, even than campaigns beloved of marketers where you have some emotion as a kind of velvet glove, but that's really to deliver the iron fist of a brand proposition. In other words, a message being put across with emotion as the carrier for it. Well, those campaigns are just not as effective as overall emotional campaigns. Just one cornetto, give it to me. Delicious ice cream from Italy. That's the only campaign that anybody in the UK remembers for Wall's Cornetto, handheld ice cream. It was aired from 1976 to 1979 and never again, and it pushed the brand to #1. And yet that ad, apart from the singing, had no content whatsoever. But that is the power of emotion to drive a brand forward. So, at Brainjuicer we said, what is the measure, beyond all doubt, that will actually predict business effectiveness? So, we took a number of campaigns, all of which the IPA had business effectiveness data for, and we looked at some really successful campaigns within each category, some medium campaigns and some ones with small business effects. And what we found is quite remarkable. Not only was emotion the best predictor of business success, but in fact the traditional standard pre-testing measures, not only were they not a good predictor, they were actually giving the wrong indication. So the ads that scored higher on persuasion, on brand recall, on cut-through, and even on getting the message across, those ads actually did worse. So those measures were giving completely the wrong indication. You can see the data here. Why? Because they're only measuring what's going on in the overloaded, little used rational brain and not what's going on in people's emotional system 1. And that's why we say what you need and what you need to measure is emotion. If people feel nothing, doesn't matter how well they got the message of the ad, they will do nothing. And what's more, all these other factors, if you start trying to tune it and say, can we dial up how well we're getting the message through, all of that can all too often become a distraction and result in changing the ad to actually reduce the emotional impact, which is what counts. One other thing that I'm able to share with you, hot off the press, we wanted to see what was the best predictor of the virality of ads, how likely they were to get forwarded on and to go viral on the internet. And we've identified that it's the emotional intensity, yes, that's key, but also the amount of surprise that people feel in response to an ad is actually a key determinant of whether it actually gets forwarded on and goes viral. So there we are. That's how you can use emotion to build and identify ads that will deliver big business effects in the market, and how you can predict whether they're likely to go viral as well. If you want to carry on the conversation, get in touch with the Chief Juicer, contact details just here, or indeed Orlando Wood, our guy who's driven forward many of these developments. Thanks very much for joining me.